Right now on the National Weather Desk, after the floods, we're back in a community where hundreds of students and teachers were rescued from their flooded school.
They've seen floods here before. It is right on a creek, but nothing quite like this.
The heat is on. Triple digits could return to Texas today, and it will feel even hotter in some urban heat islands.
Heat gets trapped and doesn't allow it to cool down.
Why have there been so many dust storm warnings in El Paso this year?
The office has now issued 98 of those warnings so far this year.
Experts say bird populations are declining across the country.
That's development, that's pollution, water scarcity.
And could the weather impact this weekend's Preakness Stakes?
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Cleanup continues in western Maryland, where heavy rain earlier this week led to flash flooding. 200 students and teachers had to be rescued from their flooded elementary school. Brad Bell is in Westernport with the story.
They are scraping and scooping, shoveling and dumping a day after a rain-swollen Georges Creek left its banks and took over the town of Westernport. Virtually every building along Main Street here flooded to some degree. The water now gone, leaving that deep mud behind.
I mean, we had literally like rivers running down the hollow up there. This was all mud. Main Street was cut off. People couldn't get to their children.
Longtime resident Sandy Corsaro says these images best tell the story of what happened here. Westernport Elementary surrounded by rising floodwaters with the children and staff inside. Then two men appear with children on their shoulders. One of them is Dustin Nash, carrying his daughter Aria to safety. He says when he heard what was happening, he rushed from work and hopped the fence to get to his little girl.
Wasn't thinking much. I was just thinking get to her, get her out of there.
I think he's a really good man for doing that.
I mean, most important thing in my life.
People here telling me they've seen floods here before. It is right on a creek, but nothing quite like this.
And once again today, there is a significant threat of severe storms. The greatest risk is in the Great Lakes region, with cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul all under a level 3 out of 5 threat. We're talking about the possibility of hail, tornadoes, and wind gusts over 75 miles per hour. The threat moves east tomorrow, with a large area of the Midwest and South under threat. Indianapolis, Nashville, St. Louis, and Cincinnati all face a level 3 risk, with a much larger area also under threat. One reason those storms are likely to develop today is the unseasonable heat. Chicago will be in the 90s today, with mid to upper 80s stretching across a wide area. But once again, the hottest temperatures will be in Central and South Texas, where triple-digit temperatures are possible again today. And in some parts of the cities, it will feel even hotter thanks to urban heat islands. As Destiny Fuller explains, experts say planting more trees and replacing roofs may help fix the problem.
Triple-digit temperatures sending a scorching wave over the Alamo City, even more so in urban parts of town, otherwise known as heat islands.
Because of the extreme level of concrete and impervious surfaces, the heat gets trapped and doesn't allow it to cool down as other areas, more rural areas, will do.
Esteban Lopez Ochoa is an assistant professor at UTSA. He specializes in agriculture and regional planning. He shared this map showing sensors in believed heat islands. Some read temperatures as high as 107 degrees on the west side.
By placing sensors on people's homes, we have seen that there's a difference in air temperature that can be between 10 and 15 Fahrenheit degrees, because they have been deprived of access to greenery or investment, because they have less resources to water their lawns and preserve their trees.
He says the university has been working with City of San Antonio officials to launch a research project this summer. Their goal is to find a way to pinpoint and crack down on the problem.
Currently, there's full areas of the city they have, full blocks, they have no trees. And that's just something that is unacceptable in a city that heats up as much as San Antonio.
Adding his plans to address roofing, pavement temperatures, and other infrastructure to give equal access to heat protection to all San Antonians.
The heat is also increasing the risk of wildfires. While rain that fell this spring makes yards look pretty, it also provided more fuel for those flames. The San Antonio Fire Department shared some useful information to help prevent fires from starting around homes.
Keep that grass mowed, the taller grasses mowed away from your home. Keep the trees trimmed away from your home. Just make it so that, like we say, predictable is preventable. I say that all the time.
Over 140 buildings have been destroyed and 35,000 acres burned by 3 wildfires in northern Minnesota. The largest of these is the Jenkins Creek fire, which started on Sunday and has burned over 25,000 acres. Despite firefighting efforts, all 3 fires continue to grow and are 0% contained. However, Mother Nature could provide some help. Forecasters say the area could see over an inch of rain between today and Saturday. And crews in eastern Arizona continue to battle a wildfire that has now burned over 6,000 acres and continues to grow. The Greer fire started Tuesday morning and is still 0% contained. Officials say strong winds in the area have helped fuel those flames. Several buildings have been destroyed by the fire, and residents in the area have been evacuated. Staying in the Southwest, it was another dusty day around Las Cruces, New Mexico, due to strong winds that kicked up dust, which made it hard to see outside. It's a similar story in El Paso, one that has been repeated over and over again this year. Meteorologist Evan O'Regan explains.
Well, this year has been considerably worse compared to recent years in terms of the dust, and the numbers do support that. And residents I spoke to today are noticing.
Yeah, I mean, I have really bad seasonal allergies, so it does really mess with it.
It's been weeks, and every week we've had a few storms like that. It's been pretty bad.
Residents across the borderland struggled yet again today in the latest edition of the Dust Bowl of 2025, as strong winds stirred up another round of blowing dust. Let's put things in perspective just to show how dusty this year has been. We all know those loud, attention-grabbing emergency alert dust storm warnings we get on our cell phones. Well, in 2023, the National Weather Service El Paso office issued a total of 15 of those warnings. Last year, that increased to 21, and as of this report, the office has now issued 98 of those warnings so far this year.
I'm actually not surprised by that number. It's like, it's become more frequent, surprisingly, and it's something that I feel like hasn't been experienced before, although I might be wrong.
And people were wondering if they were going to stay in El Paso if this continues, if the trend continues over the years. Obviously, I love El Paso, but again, it's just making it very hard.
Now, we do have more days of wind and dust in the forecast just within the next week, but always remember, this is a good reminder, if you are ever caught in a dust storm with zero visibility while driving, you always want to pull aside and stay alive.
Today, the National Hurricane Center will resume its tropical weather outlooks. Meteorologist Marion Caldwell explains why they do it before the official start of hurricane season on June 1st and what to look for these outlooks.
We are just 17 days away from the start of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, and as June 1st is quickly approaching, today the National Hurricane Center is resuming its routine tropical weather outlooks. The Tropical Weather Outlook is a map that illustrates areas for potential development, what those development chances are over the next 2 and 7 days, and where active tropical systems are located. Now, here's an example of what that map would look like when we do have activity going on in the tropics, and here's what it would look like if there's nothing going on, which is definitely that map that we like to see more so than the other. And now you may be wondering why this begins on May 15th when the season doesn't officially start until the 1st of June. Well, that's because the Eastern Pacific hurricane season begins on this day, May 15th, and the National Hurricane Center also provides information on tropical development in the Pacific Basin in addition to the Atlantic Basin. The Eastern Pacific season starts a little earlier than ours due to the storms occurring there before the official start in recent years. So if you haven't already, now is the time to ensure you have a plan in place in the instance of a storm impacting our stretch of the Gulf Coast this season.
And coming up on the National Weather Desk, the 150th running of the Preakness Stakes is this weekend. We'll look at how the weather could impact the race. And bird populations are down all across the country. We'll show you what factors are contributing to these declines.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Have you noticed fewer birds in the sky lately? Experts say bird populations are declining all across the U.S., and it's a worrisome trend. Alexis Dominguez explains.
There's a nice great blue heron just flew across. It's very calming to watch the birds through the big lens of a camera.
Bruce Donaldson is what many refer to as a birder.
So I've been doing it actively now for probably 10, 12 years. You can really get to, I don't want to say get to know them per se, but you can really see inside. It's fun to watch them.
Lately though, he says there aren't as many birds to observe.
I've been all over the state shooting wildlife, and this is by far the worst.
The 2025 State of the Birds report backs up that statement. About a third of all American bird species are considered a high or moderate concern.
That's development, that's pollution, water scarcity.
Audubon Southwest has been paying close attention and encourages land and homeowners to do the same.
If you could plant native plants in your backyard, that will attract not only our resident birds, but also the migrating birds.
But maybe you're thinking, why should I care? Because a blow to birds is a blow to humans.
Birds tell us what's happening in the world. If we see a bird population declining, then that means something is extremely wrong.
Birds are critical for healthy ecosystems and economies. They help control pests, disperse seeds, and pollinate plants. They also generate nearly $280 billion a year for the U.S. economy through birding tourism and pest control.
So it's very calming to see, Mother Nature in action. And yeah, so it's sad to see that trend lessen. So I hope we can get it back. I really do.
Cicadas are back and bringing their infamous chirps with them. The Washington, D.C. area is among the locations expecting the bugs as temperatures get warmer. Joy Wang has details and also spoke to experts about how to cope with all the noise.
I saw this funny tweet that said something like, if I had been stuck in the ground for 17 years, I'd have a lot to say as well. So it makes sense why these cicadas make so much noise. And this brood specifically, brood 14, they emerge every 17 years, and they're one of the largest periodical broods, actually. They're going to be appearing in more than a dozen states, including right here in the DMV. We're talking about Maryland and Virginia. In fact, in Maryland, there's already been a sighting. Experts say it takes time for most of them to come out. You could see holes appear in your yard as the nymphs come closer to the surface. Cicadas spend most of their lives underground, feeding on tree roots. So you'll likely see them on or around trees once they come up. And once they're spotted, expect them to stick around for weeks. You'll hear that buzzing noise, which are actually mating calls made by male cicadas. And while the noise can be exciting to some, annoying to others, those afraid of bugs might also have a tough time coping.
With cicadas, I feel like one of the biggest issues too is the noise. It's like, even if you can't see them, it's like, where are they?
For a lot of kids, that's something that can be troubling, especially for my kids that have sensory issues.
So the best way to deal with cicadas is to know more about them. For example, they're not poisonous, they don't bite, they don't sting, so that definitely helps with the fear. Of course, you can do some breathing exercises, prepare to hear them as well. And if you're having more issues when it comes to the fear of cicadas or insects or bugs, you'll definitely want to talk to your provider. Meanwhile, when it comes to why some southern states tend to see these cicadas before we do, that's because they tend to have warmer temps earlier on, and you want that topsoil to be about 64 degrees before these cicadas start to emerge.
The 150th running of the Preakness Stakes is this weekend, and the forecast could be wet for the second leg of the Triple Crown. Meteorologist Emily Gracie spoke to a horse racing analyst to find out how the winner could be impacted by the weather.
Let's go back to the Kentucky Derby because I may not be a horse racing expert, but I did notice that it was raining. Yes. It was very wet out there. So tell me how that factored in to the winner. Are some horses actually better in the rain?
Yeah, most definitely. It's really kind of a tricky situation that you're put in as a trainer and as a jockey whenever you're on a horse or racing a horse that's never done something like that before or has never raced across those conditions. And this Kentucky Derby was kind of interesting because we didn't have a lot of horses that had raced across a muddy surface in the past. There were a couple, but out of the bulk of the field, it was less that have ever had that kind of experience than more. So I think that the winner that day, although he's a good horse and we got to see him in Florida at Gulfstream Park, he really liked the track, and the horse that I bet on and the horse that finished second, I don't think he wanted any part of the track, and that's Journalism, who will be making the trip to the Preakness this weekend.
Is it ever dangerous, so wet that it's dangerous to race?
No, not really, because the track people, I just really tip my hats to them. And when I say the track people, I mean the track maintenance, the people who, just control all that. I mean, that is their sole job, is just to work on the track and keeping it safe for the athletes and for everybody involved. They don't cancel races or have to postpone races due to the track conditions. It's more just lightning or something like that.
When is the final race?
It's at it's the Belmont Stakes, and that's going to be at Saratoga because they're renovating Belmont Park right now. So it's the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga, and that is the first weekend in June.
Is that one that dries out quickly or holds on to the water?
As far as the Belmont at Saratoga, I think that the early June is a dry time for them most of the time. I say that now, I'll knock on wood. I don't want to jinx them.
The wet weather that might hit the Preakness is due to what's known as an area of low pressure. No doubt you have heard your meteorologists use the term high and low pressure, but do you know what they actually mean, those terms, and the difference between the two? Meteorologist Amanda Verrier posted about it on TikTok. Take a look.
A few terms that I know you've heard meteorologists say are high and low pressures, but what do they actually mean? Let's get into it. On a weather map, a low is represented by a red L with arrows rotating in a counterclockwise motion. This is for the northern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere would be the opposite. They get their name from having the lowest pressure of air at their center rather than the surrounding area. Lows bring the cloudier, stormier weather because of the convergence and rising of air. To put it simply, air is flowing together and upwards. High pressures are the opposite in what most people like to see because it brings a sunnier, calmer weather. High pressure is represented by a large blue H with arrows moving clockwise. Again, would be the opposite in the southern hemisphere. The air is moving down and away from that center of high pressure, and that brings us those blue skies. Now that you can differentiate the two, which would you rather have?
And time now for a short break, but first we take to the skies over Laguna Beach, California.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Water safety is a concern along the Congaree River in South Carolina. After recent heavy rain, the river flows through the city of Columbia. Clara Faith talked to the Congaree River Keeper for a breakdown of how floodwater can impact rivers in the region.
Very often, it's not just water that spills into the area's rivers. Congaree River Keeper Bill Stangler has been testing and studying the region's rivers for more than 10 years.
But when we have these big rain events and these even smaller flood events like this, there are also water quality concerns. So all that stuff that's in parking lots or on roadways or things like that washes into our creeks, in addition to problems including sewer spills.
Right now, there are 3 sewage spills near the Saluda River in the Columbia metro area.
This is not a good time to get out on the river and try and do things because there are pollutants in the water, especially during flood events.
While there might be some concerns in the river, there are no issues with the region's drinking water.
Looking for more weather news and videos? Find us on all your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back.